Right, lovely. Let's get started. Thank you very much for all of you for joining. And as I said, no doubt we've got some very familiar faces in the room, and we have got some, hopefully, some new ones. There's no point in having a movement that is changing a profession if it's the same old people. So I hope that there's plenty of new people joining us, and some of you no doubt wondering what on earth the Sustainable Procurement Pledge is about. So delighted to have you here. We are here for the next 90 minutes, and hopefully you can join us for all of that. Again, we're going to do a bit of an update on what's going on in the SPP. We then got the meat of our presentation and discussion today, which is going to be diving into how to embed inclusivity into supply chains. Absolutely delighted to have the CPO of L'Oreal, Audrey Izard, and also Camille Putois of the Business for Inclusive Growth, the CEO there. So we have got a really interesting presentation. And as you procurement professionals like it, practical tools, stuff that you can actually use. So we'll be covering that in the middle section of the meeting. And towards the end, usually the last sort of 15 minutes or so, we do like to have networking. We are a community. We do want you to meet each other, even if it's only briefly. So do stick around at the end and you'll be able to meet some of your peers in the breakout rooms and introduce each other and meet people from all over the world who are very much in the same boat. So you are very much part of the conversation. Please stay on mute for this session if you can. However, I want questions. I especially want ideas, links, comments, anything that you think is useful for the SPP. Just to explain, the chat gets saved, it gets digested. We take any interesting stuff out, ideas, opportunities, suggestions, presentations, suggestions, case studies, whatever it is. So do put anything you think is relevant in the chat. Label it ideally if you can, make it easier for our team, but do put it in there. We suck it all up and use it as the SPP does. So please do put in the chat. When we come to the presentations, if you've got a question, you can put your hand up. If you go to the reactions button in the tool, you can put your hand up, but you can actually ask your question. You can, of course, ask questions in the chat, but it is easier if you put your hand up and I call to you. But do stay on mute until then. It is a meeting. It's a giant meeting, obviously. Everyone can talk, so be very conscious of that. And of course, be respectful of the other ambassadors as well with the way that you participate. We should just make sure that obviously we're not going to cover any conversations in this meeting that shouldn't be covered. So just do be aware of that and aware of competition law, etc. Please be also aware in the chat of things that you say in there as well, because that's equally as important to be aware of. So what are we going to be covering today? So there will be the usual Sustainable Procurement Pledge update. We are then going to get into the meat of the discussion, which this month or this quarter we tackle inclusivity, and then we will have that networking. But there is a lot to cover, so we are going to crack on with that. So for those that don't know the SPP, and there are some of you new on there, again, I won't go too much into the background of it. Please do go to spp.earth to read the history of why this exists and how this was founded. But we are procurement professionals. This is for procurement, by procurement. This is about procurement taking ownership of its profession and of helping people and planet. So it is very much for procurement, by procurement, translating the noise of sustainability and applying it practically to driving change in the profession. We do have a vision that all ultimately supply chains will have embedded sustainable procurement practices. We want sustainable procurement to not exist. We just want it to be procurement. We want responsible sourcing to not exist. We just want to be sourcing. All obvious stuff that, and it's really about fundamentally change management. We think that there are two things that we need to help you do. We need to empower and equip procurement professionals with the tools and the knowledge, and we need to encourage your leadership or support progressive leadership to thrive and flourish and to allow you to make it happen. We do have a goal, and these goals are getting bigger and more important all of the time. Well, we want to get 1 million procurement professionals by 2030 to have not just signed the pledge, but actually evidenced to us that we have influenced positively your decision making, and more on our progress to that very, very shortly, which is just frankly extraordinary, I have to say. It's very exciting. So we think there's 4 reasons why procurement professionals can't necessarily keep the pledge. You don't know where to look for content. Even when you know what to do, you don't know how to do it. You lack the tools. Sometimes you don't know who to do it with. You need that support of your peers. And sometimes you might have all of that and your leadership won't let you do it. So these are some of the 4 gaps that we as the SPP are trying to help you overcome to be able to get on and get it done. We are growing rapidly. We are now 7,500 people in procurement that have committed to the pledge. Our goal is to get to 10,000 By the end of 2022, I put 2023 on here, but it is 2022, and we are well on the course to get that. You can imagine our hockey stick to get to 1 million. We are well on course, and as I said, we expect we'll be growing incredibly rapidly in the second half. Every country you can imagine represented, and we're already collecting data on how much we have been able to help and support you, even in our young days as an organization. So more on that, I'm going to pass over to Astrid, if you're there, Astrid. Astrid's going to give us a bit of an update and a story of World Sustainable Procurement Day and our annual activity report. So over to you, Astrid.
Thanks a lot, Ollie. Yeah, and actually we are not only shaping the future, but we are also writing history. And what we did this year for the first time, and we promise also to continue with this amazing event, is that we introduced the World Sustainable Procurement Day. And it took place on the 21st of March this year during the spring equinox. We do not repeat it to autumn, but we repeat it next year. So save the date. Next year, March 21, 2023 is the next time where we will do it. And what you would see there and what we did this year is what Ollie said. It was a 21 session for procurement, by procurement, really practical hands-on session. We had more than 6,500 registrants for this event. And you see also more than 70 speakers from around the world. So this was really amazing event, and we received tons of positive feedback. So thanks for all who contributed to this event, and also for those who came. You see the digest, and this is the very same that we also do with the session today on our webpage, www.spp.earth. You find all the recordings, all the information that you shared with us and that we share back with you and the community on our webpage. So please check it out, and don't forget to save the date for next year. And I think in the next slide, where you find all the history that we wrote in 2021 and also in the first half of 2022, is summarized in our annual activity report. So you will find it again on our webpage, and insights from the activities, and also what Ollie mentioned, you would find information about our backbone, where we are coming from, what we are aiming for, how we are governing also the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, the work streams, the existing chapters already in an industry, in a country, or also focusing on specific topics. All that you need to know for now about SPP is in this annual activity report. So please check it out and share it also with others who do not know about SPP. I think this is the best resource of information that you can grab at the moment.
Excellent, thank you. And we got some interesting results from our latest, well, our first really, wasn't it? Our Sustainable Procurement Pulse that we did recently as well.
Indeed. So I think we did it actually for the third time, but the first time we did it with Gartner, and Gartner supported us with this procurement pulse check. So the first time we did not only ask our SPP ambassador community how they feel about SPP, but also we approached other procurement professionals outside of our community. And you see the promising results already here. So very, very grateful impact KPIs, where we see that 71 of those who answered to our survey said that there is an impact that we make through SPP, and they are making more positive decisions in their resourcing activities. The same is true for the change. So 76 feel even more encouraged to drive the change. And you said it, Ollie. So when we are talking about sustainable procurement, it's a massive change management approach and project. So, and this is really where we see we make an impact with SPP. And also the satisfaction with the resources that we provide to you is quite high. We see room for improvement, and we promise also to make progress on the road. And the Net Promoter Score, this is the basic one that you know from any of the services that you consume in the internet, is also close to the 10 where we want to be. So thanks a lot for all, again, who participated in the survey. This is something that helps us also to benchmark ourselves towards our impact targets. So we are not only aiming for 1 million until 2030, but we also want to make a positive impact on your sourcing decisions. And this is the pulse check that we need to see if we are contributing and providing the tools and the knowledge that you need to make progress on your individual responsible sourcing journey.
Excellent. And what makes me even more proud about this, I have to say, is the fact that over the last 2.5 years, all of this has been achieved with zero money and completely made up with passionate volunteers who've met every Wednesday night to make it happen. It's quite extraordinary, the support that you've given us and enabled us to do. Lots of people want us to do more and achieve more, but frankly, doing what we've done is extraordinary so far. But times are changing, we're growing up, we're getting more organized. And perhaps, Thomas, you can introduce a bit of an update on us as an organization and where we're getting to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, as you say, this has all happened with volunteers, zero budgets. We have at this point 50 people sitting across the world who is active either in our steering team, in our chapters, or trying to also coordinate now the champions that are coming up. So of course, there are limitations. If you have 7,500 passionate professionals who want to learn more, who want to have the latest and greatest content, you know, it's of course necessary that you also start building the infrastructure to make that happen. So that's exactly what we have done. We thankfully also have found the people who is helping us. Bertrand is going to talk a little bit about that as well. But with that funding, we are now able to actually go and have the first step and hire employee number 1. So we have an active search for an executive director that's out there. We extended the timeline so that we could at least share it with you. So if any of you know of an amazing person out there who, you know, has experience with startups also in the nonprofit scene, then of course we are very, very interested in hearing about that. Ambition is to identify the best person who will help all of us moving forward in the next couple of months. Hopefully the person will be available, and then of course gradually increase the scoping of what we're doing as we move forward. So we're working with a search company that is particularly focused on the nonprofit sector, also the UN organizations. So let's see, as soon as we have some great news, we will certainly give you an update on that one.
Thank you, Thomas. What an opportunity. As I said, I'm sure that hopefully there's people listening in that fancy the task of this as well. It would be an extraordinary opportunity. Also, they are inheriting an absolute beast of a movement. So it's going to be a busy job, but working with, honestly, generally some of the best people that I've ever worked with. So do share the role, and if you fancy it, go for it. We're very, very, very excited to be reaching this point. Now, we wouldn't have reached this point if it wasn't for the help of some very important people. And I just want to kind of highlight this before I hand over to you, Bertrand. But the idea is we have coordinated some of our supporters and people that wanted to help us into 3 distinct groups. And this is some of the stuff that's going to be happening moving forward. So as Bertrand's going to talk about in a second, we've created our League of Champions. We do need leadership from the top to be able to help us. But we also need you and others to be the bottom up to inspire us as well. In order to drive change, and it is really about change management we're talking about here, we're also about to announce the new transformational panel, which essentially is going to be made up of those responsible for capability building, procurement excellence, for driving change in sustainable procurement. So we're going to be building that panel advisory board, which is going to help us and hopefully help themselves over the next 12 months as well. We mustn't also forget our supporters. As I said, we aren't traditionally looking and engaging with sponsors or supporters like other procurement platforms as such, but we appreciate the importance of the solution provider community for really driving change. So thank you to the first few that EcoVadis and GiveWith, who've very kindly donated to our movement as well. That we are nothing without you, without that holistic capability. So thank you to the SPP supporters. But more on the champions, and over to you, Bertrand, to announce our first wave.
So thank you very much, Oliver. And here, repeating also, thank you very much, Oliver and Thomas, for all the work you did with also all the people involved with you to get that step made. Welcome and gratefully appreciating the first champions on the screen today. You are extremely important in what we have been able to achieve and what we are now being able to achieve moving forward because of you. This general manager will also be visible and into the organizations because of the funding that you are providing, and not only providing for a general manager, but definitely to manage the program and to bring the program at highest value for the champions, for the supporters, and for all ambassadors, and moving to the 1 million that just mentioned earlier. So welcome and thank you very much, Accenture, GSK, Lego, Merck, Schneider Electric, Solvay, Tetra Pak, and Walgreens Boots Alliance. Now, to give a bit more details on the champions, who are the league? The league is on the screen. The leagues are these people which came with us. So Lisa, Lynn, Kai, Daniel, Joachim, Jan, Lucia, Jim, and our chair for the Champion League will be also Henrik. I mean, thank you so much. And we are extremely humbled and also so grateful to have this panel, all of you joining this league and making us really now achieving and moving forward to the ambition and the targets of SPP. Now, if you want to be also on screen, if you want to join SPP, if you want to make sure that we reach that ambition as we want to change the world of procurement through these responsibilities that we have undertaken into SPP, you can do it. And if you can move to the next slide, Oliver, we have the opportunity right now until the 15th of September to apply and to become also an SPP champion. So an SPP champion is a commitment translating in a donation to the Sustainability Procurement Pledge to get very much SPP empowered and enable that organization. So you will be empowering and enabling SPP to the fit for the future as we have applied. And it is very important also because it is not only given, we have also the opportunity to give you and to make sure that we are engaging also with your organization as champion. So all of that is under preparation, will be onboarding very soon, but all of that will take place to ensure that we will also supporting and contributing to the capability build of your team when it comes to knowledge, to network, to tools and connection. So it is extremely important that the more champion we have, the better, because it makes also SPP sustainable to our commitment and to make sure that we are able to definitely achieve the mission for which we have all decided all together to engage, to share and to learn, to give and to change. And for that, we definitely thank you very, very much that we are able, Oliver, to make Oliver and Thomas very busy with new interviews, but signing off and giving us definitely the energy and the passion and the commitment and the example to many of us that leadership is on the road. And with this, we will make SPP definitely the change agent into the procurement sustainability. Back to you, Oliver. Thank you very much.
Bertrand. Thank you, Bertrand. And as I said, that first wave of champions are people that are obviously friends of the SPP, but also ones that want to take that leadership. And I think what's really important is that diversity in that group in terms of the companies and everything else, but also in terms of the people. I'd like to see more diversity in that group. I'd like to see champions from all over the world and all sorts of genders, creeds, and everything else. So as I said, it's a call to you and your organizations. If you feel like your organization would like to get that coordinated support for your entire procurement function to drive that change, to navigate the world of sustainability, and ultimately get a filter on all the initiatives and tools in the planet, then we're here to help you. So do get in touch. And as I said, we want all shapes and sizes to be part of it. Everybody is welcome. That is the power and the importance of this. So do get in touch with us. You can email us at champions@spp.earth if you want more information, or get in touch with myself, Thomas, or any of us, and we'll be able to help you to understand what it involves and what we can do to help you. So we should touch on chapters now. Thomas, I don't know if you want to pick this up.
No, maybe I just want to, so again, thanks for everybody who is, having the right, I guess, circumstances to become a champion. But of course, not everybody has to be a champion. We are super grateful for each and every ambassador. So it's maybe also worthwhile to just stress that all the knowledge, everything that comes out will be, of course, available for free to all the ambassadors out there. So that's the whole notion of democratizing the knowledge, making sure that we crowdsource and make it available. One way of doing that is, of course, also to engage with your own tribe. And many of you are active in some of our chapters already, and I see many of you actually are our co-chairs. But it's probably worthwhile just to remind you that there is 20+ chapters already active, where we have co-chairs who is organizing a whole bunch of stuff, who is ready to take your topics, match you up with people who may have the solution. and start dialogues around how do we actually deal with some of these practical challenges that we have. So we strongly encourage you to find your tribe, maybe tribes, right? Because everybody has a country, industry, and probably a topic dimension that is relevant for them. So go into spp.earth, go to chapters, figure out who is active. If you see there's a gap where you have a need, then also feel free to reach out to us, because of course, when we are prepared to also open more chapters. So not a problem at all. So either join or volunteer to also become one of the co-chairs that has taken on that leadership commitment. The next slide is just, as far as I remember, this is just a signal of what all these amazing co-chairs are already doing. We have the scope 3 and public procurement, surprisingly at exactly the same time on June 28th. At 3 o'clock GMT, but don't fear, everything will be recorded and made available, of course, on spp.earth. So a decision time to do that. We've got the team in UK, we've got the pharma now combining with scope 3, also going into some of these discussions. But quite honestly, there's a whole bunch also happening beyond this. Even we have the first face-to-face gatherings happening. So the German team is now having lunch and learns, etc. So help us shape what is most relevant for the area, for the chapter, for the tribe that you want to be part of. And with that, I think I was the last bit before we actually get into the really cool stuff, where we have some amazing speakers who is just ready to share their experience. So thanks to both of them for being here. And Oliver, I'll hand it over to you.
Lovely, excellent, thank you. And just to say, as I said, please do sign up to the right chapters. It's your way of filtering almost the SPP experience. So whether it's your industry, whether it's your country, or whether it's the issue that you feel is a priority for you as a procurement professional, please do join the right chapters and everything else. I did find it funny that the marketing chapter is the only one without a logo. I don't know whether the irony of that was clear to everyone else, but yeah, there are many chapters from many different functions and categories. So delighted to have you. But as Thomas says, this is probably even the more exciting bit. So delighted to be joined, hopefully, by both Camille and Audrey. Camille and Audrey, are you there? Hopefully you are.
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
Yes, I am too.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear, two voices. That was very important, not just one. Delighted to have you both. So one of the most important things about the SPP, and one of the biggest questions that we always get asked, is how does the SPP work alongside all of the different industry initiatives, all of the different procurement professional organizations, all these different initiatives? The answer always is with the SPP is we want to support and enable and endorse everybody. We are the connecting force between all initiatives, all tools, all of those things. And one of those organizations, Business for Inclusive Growth. We're delighted to be partnering with you on this and this presentation and the launch of your tool. You're an example of some wonderful stuff happening in what business is doing, and we are delighted to highlight, to profile, and let the rest of the world know about you. So delighted to be joined by you both today. So perhaps we could both do a quick introduction of you individually. Perhaps start with you, Camille, Camille and Audrey, and then Camille, perhaps you can introduce us to Business for Inclusive Growth. So perhaps we'll start with Audrey. Would you like to introduce yourself, Audrey?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Oliver, for your kind words, kind welcome words. And so good afternoon and good morning, everyone. So I'm Camille Putois, CEO of Business for Inclusive Growth. I will be happy to share a few words about the coalition and then explain why we decided to work on an inclusive sourcing methodology. And then I will be happy to hand over to Audrey, who will be more operational and more practical than me. But maybe a few words about the coalition. I think there are a couple of slides that we prepared. And Marie, Marie Bassot is project manager at B4IG, and she supports the inclusive sourcing working group, and she plays a critical role in this work stream within the coalition. So a few words about Business for Inclusive Growth. It's a global CEO-led coalition that was launched in 2019, building on the belief that businesses have a critical role to play in the fight against inequalities. It's a CEO-led coalition with public and private partners. And the main partner, the strategic partner, is the OECD. Next slide. And the coalition is co-chaired by the Secretary General of the OECD and one of the CEOs, currently Emmanuel Faber, who was elected co-chair of the coalition when he was CEO, Danone CEO, and who still co-chairs the coalition until the end of the year. As you can see, so there are 30, a bit more than 30 members. A new member joined the coalition yesterday, Enel, the Italian company. Big company, major companies, a majority of European companies, but more and more American companies, and 2 Japanese companies, Ricoh and Hitachi. Partners, I mentioned the OECD. There are also a couple of international organizations, such as the ILO. For example, we work a lot with the ILO on fair recruitment. We are also, other partners are foundations, Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, academics, HEC, ESSEC, for example, and a few other partners. Next slide. So I mentioned, yes. The CEOs signed a pledge that covers the key areas of inclusive growth. In a nutshell, we are working on social issues, that is human rights, inclusive workplaces, and inclusion, strengthening inclusion in the value chains and the ecosystem. And of course, inclusive sourcing is part of this 3 pillar, and it's a critical work stream for the coalition. So maybe a few words on this work stream. Next slide. Yes, thank you. So very quickly, so I said that the coalition was launched in 2019 because of the lockdown, etc. In fact, we started to work in the summer 2020, and we very quickly decided to launch a work stream focusing on inclusive sourcing methodology. A work stream led by L'Oréal. And thank you again to L'Oréal's team for their strong involvement, engagement. It's really a pleasure to work with you, and your contribution to the methodology we are going to share is huge. The working group included several member companies, European and American companies, so BNP Paribas, Danone, KDP, sorry, American company, Mars, Pret-a-Manger, and Veolia. And so building on L'Oréal's expertise and their solidarity sourcing program, we developed a methodology, first step, and a few member companies, the companies I mentioned, piloted the methodology. They tested, they shared the key takeaways from the test. It was very, very interesting. And during 8 months, these companies worked and tested the methodology. So what we are going to share with you is not only a methodology based on high-level considerations, but a methodology that has been tested, and it is public. We released it yesterday, and we are very, very happy to share it, to get feedback from practitioners. This is a work in progress. We will be happy to edit it in the future if required. And for us, it's one of the key dimensions of the coalition, and I will wrap up saying that we want to have impact to scale up business actions in inclusive business actions. And if we want to scale up business actions on inequality, we have to share what we do. We have to share best practices, our key learnings, and to have an impact beyond the coalition and to have an impact in the wider business community. So I'm very happy to hand over to Audrey now, and I will be happy to answer the questions that I saw in the chat box. Maybe later, but maybe Audrey, over to you.
Thank you, Camille. Great partnership indeed with B4IG and our B4IG members. So first of all, hello everyone. It's very great to be here with you at the SPP Ambassador meeting. It's my first meeting, so very happy to join you. My name is Audrey Izard. I'm CPO for L'Oréal for indirect sourcing. And I would like to thank Oliver and the SPP team for having us and providing this incredible platform to share with you today's B4IG Inclusive Sourcing Methodology. I'm honored to represent L'Oréal and the B4IG Coalition who developed this tool and put a lot of their heart into it. The B4IG Inclusive Sourcing Guide was built around the conviction that our supply chain is a source of opportunity for the disadvantaged. And I think that's really the first important point to keep in mind. But what does inclusive sourcing mean? Because there is sometimes some shortcut and a misunderstanding about it. And for us, it's about ensuring that workers and suppliers have an equal opportunity to compete through the sourcing policies and practice of larger companies. By adopting a principle of inclusiveness, companies can also seek to create a more sustainable relationship with their suppliers that are based on social development and economic progress for all. So L'Oréal launched its Solidarity Sourcing program more than 10 years ago. Through this program, we use its significant purchasing power to take a positive impact beyond our direct operation. Our teams partner with our supplier to create employment for people who are typically excluded from the job market. We also open our group tenders to companies that employ people from vulnerable communities to enable them to have access to work and income, and to suppliers that traditionally do not have access to the major tender of multinationals. It has led to generating decent work for over 80,000 disadvantaged workers for L'Oréal. And by doing this, we are applying our diversity and inclusion strategy to our suppliers, who are part of our extended ecosystem. So when L'Oréal joined B4IG in 2019, we wanted to build on this experience, and we decided to share our inclusive sourcing as well as to leverage other companies' practice in order to have a single common approach to inclusive sourcing. And for us, it's a snowball effect. We can only be as effective if we are going into it together. And you were mentioning it, Oliver, it's a strength of the networks that can really make a difference. So it was important for us to help build a cross-sector how-to guide that can support companies regardless of the industry or geography in which they operate. And that is how we developed the two tools we will present today. First, so a very practical, concrete, step-by-step inclusive sourcing methodology to enable companies to embed and deploy these inclusiveness principles through their sourcing organization and supply chain operations. And the methodology provides guidance on how to launch an inclusive sourcing strategy, including all of the essential steps. And second, a self-assessment tool to help companies to evaluate the maturity of their own inclusive sourcing policy. So this program plays a key role in the pride of our teams to contribute to a more inclusive business. And more importantly for you, they were especially designed for procurement professionals who are the true change agents for inclusive sourcing practices in businesses. So my colleagues, Jonathan and Marie, will now present the tools in more details and take your question and comment, of course, on the approach. What we hope is that the launch today is just the start of many more occasions to adopt these principles and create hundreds of thousands of jobs for disadvantaged people and underprivileged communities, because we are convinced that to be sustainable, growth has to be inclusive. So I encourage you all to download the tools on the B4IG website following this call. And I thank you for your time and for the platform today. So now I'll hand it over to Marie and Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Thank you much, Audrey, Camille. Oliver, can you hear me? Yes, you can. Okay, wonderful.
I just can't speak. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, you can. Okay, wonderful. Well, hello everyone, and I'm just gonna take up from where Audrey left off. So I'm with Marie Basso of the B4IG team. So similar to what Camille was saying just a moment ago, and Audrey as well, as of course I've actually been involved in this project for the last 2 years. working with all the companies that Camille mentioned, working very closely with the B4IG team. We're very excited to be able to launch it here today. So Marie, who's with me, Marie, can you share on screen the methodology? I think it's on its way. Okay, wonderful. And so just so everyone understands how Marie and we're going to run through the two tools, in fact, the three which were mentioned earlier. We're going to kind of give you an overview, the outline, just so you really understand how they're structured and their format. And then afterwards, we left time, Oliver and SPP has left some time afterwards for taking questions. But we really want to take this opportunity, for you to understand sort of the general logic and the rationale of these tools. And obviously, we encourage you to download the tools and to take the time to go through them yourself. So first, just to start off, and I know Audrey explained this extremely well just a moment ago, but really just to sort of underline the point, we understand, and all of you know very well, how it's very common for procurement teams to really prioritize cost and delivery time and quality in terms of their procurement activities. And the purpose of this methodology, you see the cover right here on screen, is really about how, at a very concrete level, can you integrate inclusion criteria in those procurement practices. That's really what the methodology is for. It's really to help your corporations, your companies, to, first of all, to better understand the concept of inclusive sourcing, and then to help you or to help them design and implement policies, really inclusive sourcing policies in your organization. As Audrey explained a moment ago, the way we've sort of defined inclusive sourcing is really how can you leverage that procurement, those procurement decisions, the spend decisions, to really give people in vulnerable situations decent work. And how can you, foster the inclusion of also suppliers in vulnerable situations. It goes without saying that those are voluntary measures by a company. This is not under any sort of regulatory framework. What we're talking about are these would be voluntary measures by your company. So that can take many different shapes. Obviously it can be working with suppliers who are certified in sustainable sourcing. In the case of L'Oreal, it can be with some of our raw material suppliers. If we want to work with more subsistence farming or farming communities, it can be our ability also to make custom-made programs with certain suppliers. So we can really focus in on generating work for very specific underprivileged populations. And it can also mean choosing specific suppliers as part of our diversity and inclusion policy, as Audrey was saying. For example, if we wanted to work with minority-owned or women-owned businesses. So maybe if you can go to the next slide, Marie, I think, let's go here, perfect. Let's just stop here at the table of contents. And I just want to take a couple of minutes to help, to just look at the table of contents, to run through it, and then we'll do a few deeper dives into a few of these specific steps. But what you can see, hopefully you can see it, I don't know, but hopefully what you can see is we've built the methodology to be a step-by-step process. It's really in order to accompany you through all of the natural hurdles you may meet in order to incorporate these policies within your organizations. And we've taken the time to really try, and also based on our own experience, having gone through many of those hurdles, L'Oreal in terms of our solidarity sourcing program, is to really look at how can we accompany you and help you surmount some of those natural hurdles. So the first segment, so it's sort of split up into 3 columns, as you can see, and the first segment is really about how do you create a common vision within your organization of what is inclusive sourcing, and how do you engage your top management? And we've heard this from the other companies within our working group 3 of B4IG, time and time again. We all agreed that it's very hard to advance an inclusive sourcing policy within your organization if you don't have the buy-in of your top management. So we really want to help you in terms of how do you get that executive sponsorship? How do you define those objectives? How do you build the business case? How do you build the internal business case to win over your management in terms of explaining how inclusive sourcing can make your supply chain more resilient, how it can help build your brand equity, how it can allow you to attract a greater diversity of suppliers. And those are some of the things we really run through in that first segment. And in a minute, I'm gonna just take one example of a step, just so you can see what it looks like. But first, I want to give you more of the general outline. So that would be in what we call stage 1, engage your team and leadership on a common vision. The second column, the second segment, is more really about how, if you've got that support, how do you then develop an operational roadmap that will help you really put in place a policy and inclusive sourcing practices? How can your organization decide as an organization what suppliers it would like to target, or also what types of inclusive sourcing projects it would like to prioritize? And also the question, which is always very important when putting in place pilot projects or programs, is also how do you measure the performance, and how do you measure success if you really feel that these programs are meeting the objectives you set in terms of making sure that your procurement program is having the sort of social impact you'd like. And then we get to the third phase, which, it's sort of we wanted to make sure we get to what, through what we see as sort of the third and natural phase, which is to say, beyond putting in place a few pilot projects and beyond putting in an initial program, how can you also ensure that inclusive sourcing becomes something which is really long lasting inside your organization? And we can understand that a lot of changes can happen. And there's always a risk that what was a priority today is no longer a priority tomorrow. So we want to make sure that how can you really embed inclusive sourcing in your organization, in your ways of working? How can you ensure that it becomes second nature to your procurement teams, and also to the way you think about your relationship with suppliers? And so we felt that that's how the methodology is really built, really step by step. And always we have, aimed for procurement professionals. So now let me give you maybe a more very sort of concrete example. So maybe I'd suggest, Marie, if you could just go to the very first step. So this is step one. This is assuming you're really initiating the process. And the idea being that you as an entrepreneurial company wanting to implement an inclusive sourcing principles in your procurement strategy, where would you start? Well, the very start, obviously, is your ability to assess what exists within your organization and really identify the gaps. Because probably, especially those of you here today who are all part of the SPP, I have no doubt you've already put in place a certain number of responsible procurement policies. And so what we've tried to do here is to create a tool, which Marie will show you in a moment, which I think is really one of the most exciting things about what we're sharing here today, is this self-assessment tool is really going to help you measure your gaps across every dimension of inclusive sourcing. And by identifying those gaps, it's going to allow you to see where you're strong and probably where your organization and your practices may be a little weaker, and you really need to sort of do some capacity building. And so this first step one naturally will lead into the tool we'll be showing in a second. But if you just sort of run through the pages, Marie, you can see that we're trying to give you the ways to think about doing that initial assessment, so you know what your baseline is, you know where your gaps are before you start thinking about how you want to build an inclusive sourcing program. And so you can see here, and what I should have said, and pardon me, I should have started by saying, you'll note that every single one of these sheets, each step sheet, is kind of built always the same way. You're always going to have an idea, the concept of that step, which we will explain. We then move to some practical examples, which we were able to get from the different members of our B4IG working group 3. Some really practical examples if you wanted to say, well, what does that look like actually within an organization? And then afterwards, we always sort of end with certain tips, tips from people who've done this before, really practical tips. And you'll see that if in the 3 I'll be showing you, but also if you get the chance to download the document, you'll see that pretty quickly. That's how it's built always throughout those different. If you go to, let's go to a sheet from the second segment, which was about the operational roadmap. Let's take similarly step 2.1 is how do you think about, if you're going to build this, how do you want to measure inclusion? You want to create a more actionable program. So immediately the question is, how can you measure that? And in order to measure that, you have to have a very operational definition of who are the people you would like to be the beneficiaries of your inclusive sourcing programs. Really, who would those beneficiaries be ultimately in terms of your practices? And this is an extremely strategic decision for an organization. It's an extremely strategic decision because that decision is strategic not only in terms of how you're then going to build inclusive sourcing, but in terms of what's that the beneficiaries of your organization is going to also define your corporate brand identity. It's how you're building your brand equity. It's how you're defining yourself as an organization. So, you know, some corporations, some especially multinational organizations may choose to define a type of beneficiary. You know, is it seniors, long-term unemployed, refugees, minorities, women-owned businesses, veterans? That's the sort of decision that could be made at a global level, you know, really at a corporate headquarters level. Or in some cases, you may say, no, we're going to define our beneficiaries based on the local realities of who are the vulnerable populations in each given market. One market differs very much from another in terms of what are those communities who are considered as being vulnerable or not having access to decent work. And so these are some of the strategic decisions you have to make as an organization. And so this sheet, which you see here, step 2.1, is to really help you to sort of walk you through some of the considerations you have to make. And if you go to the next page, Marie, you see we also provide certain examples of how we may define L'Oréal, for example, beneficiaries, but that can really differ from one company to the next. And now if we just pass to the third, well, let's go to segment number 3. Now, once again, I'm sorry if I'm not going through every single sheet, but it's just we wouldn't have enough time today. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of what you would find in this methodology. Now we're in the third segment. As I mentioned earlier, the third segment of the methodology is really how do you embed this in your organization? And so key, very crucial to that is training, is your ability to continuously and regularly train your buyers, your procurement teams, on how to do inclusive sourcing. And a lot of what you will find in this sheet is really not just the hard skills, but also the soft skills you need in turn so that your buyers, your procurement teams, it really becomes second nature in the way they build relationships with their suppliers, is that they're constantly evaluating procurement opportunities and seeing opportunities also to advance their inclusive, and also their abilities to work with suppliers, you know, key, you know, strategic suppliers in the way they try to engineer projects which could be considered as inclusive. So, and once again, you'll find that, I'm just mentioning this, and this is step 3.4. There's a number of other steps. I skipped a number of steps, obviously, but I want to really save some time for Marie, who will be presenting to you right now the self-assessment tool. All I can say now is I really hope as many of you as possible will download the documents, read, go through them, and hopefully try to, you know, it will feed into your thought process, and you will ultimately try to apply some of the concepts and the advice you'll find in those documents. But now I'd rather first now hand it over to Marie.
Thank you, Jonathan. Maybe before I dive into the self-assessment tool, I can quickly show what the appendix looks like because it goes with the methodology. So just a quick show of what the appendix is. It's an additional document that encompasses other examples that we've mentioned in the methodology, but wanted to have you know, a concrete vision of it in a separate document. And so they provide further illustrations on the different tools and steps that we've described. So here, for example, if I zoom out a little bit, for the step 1.2, set your overall ambition and objectives. Here you have an example of how L'Oréal, through their solidarity sourcing, committed to sustainability, how they launched the L'Oréal for the Future program, and what kind of commitments they took by 2030. So you have a variety of examples from different companies that participated to the project, and this can help you if you need you know, additional examples to understand the steps and go through them as well. Okay, now let's go through the self-assessment tool. So sharing my screen again, hopefully you can see it properly. Oh, good. Perfect. So this tool is the third tool that we're sharing today. And this is a tool that is really crucial at any point during the journey, to be honest. So when it's a starting point, but it's also a way to assess your maturity on your inclusive sourcing journey during the journey, and also you know, touch base maybe at the end once you've launched your first pilots to see where you're standing now. And so it covers different aspects of inclusive sourcing that you can see here. So for example, policy and governance, stakeholder management, sourcing requirement and assessment, grievance mechanism and remediation, and finally monitoring and reporting. It's deeply connected with the methodology. So the different questions that we will go through in a minute are questions that are addressed in the methodology. And so if you need specific definition on certain things, you can refer to the methodology for that. The tools are really interconnected. And the way it works is that you have different questions that we will go through and you have an opportunity to answer them. You have 4 different types of answers that cover different levels over your maturity level. The first one is no, not yet. The second one is that you just started piloting. The third one is that you have deployed. And the fourth one is that you have systematized the action that is being described. And so each of those answers will give you certain points. And then at the end, you land on a number and on a spider chart that shows you where you stand on the different topics. I think all of this will be a lot clearer once we dive into the questions and into the spider chart. Also, just a bit of background, we have the questions are highlighted in different shades of blue. The first one is very light, it's more of a beginner level. The second one is a medium blue, so more advanced, and the leader questions, the questions that are more at a mature level are in dark blue. So we also share a few recommendations on how to use the tool, and also the fact that you should probably share it with your suppliers so they can also take it. Without further ado, I think we can dive into the tool itself. So of course, there is information to fill out. This is not the most exciting part. If we go to the prerequisites, this is something that we considered as prerequisite, which is compliance to social fundamentals of human rights with proper, of course, due diligence and grievance mechanism, with social edits done by a third party, and ethical commitment letter, maybe if that's the way you've done it. And also, of course, a policy or a code of conduct to engage your tier 1 suppliers on their social and environmental responsibility. And then once you dive into the question, so just letting you know, I've filled out the entire tool so we could have a spider chart at the end. So this is typically where you would answer. If I show you, you have different types of answers, and depending on your level, you can answer it. But what I've done here is done drastic differences between the different topics so we could see the difference on the spider chart. And all those topics in orange are the topics we've just talked about. And then you have different subtopics: scope, communication, audit. So for example, if we take this one, communication, your inclusive sourcing commitment are publicly available on your website. Yes, that's the case. No, we're working on it. You just answer the question according to where you're at and where you stand right now. If we go to governance, for example, management buy-in, you have defined a strategy and set inclusive sourcing targets, so categories, geographies, beneficiaries. Yes, not yet, we're deploying. All of those answers will give you a certain number of points. Here it's all 4, so of course you get a really high grade, but if you were at more of a beginner level, it would be slightly lower, and it will show differently on the map. So then if we move on, for example, to stakeholder management, which is a really important part, you also have questions about internal buying, and of course, how you are engaging in partnerships to monitor the impact of your inclusive sourcing program, to identify vulnerable populations that you might want to also target in your inclusive sourcing program. And again, you have all of the questions here. Sometimes you can report to the methodology for further information, and on the right, your answers. You can add comments, of course, if you want, especially if you're sharing this with their suppliers. They might want to add additional comments to share with you because they're in, of course, a very specific situation to them. And so that might be useful as well. Then we go to sourcing requirement and assessment. And here, for example, the focus on inclusivity. So let's take the middle one. You engage in multilateral discussions with international organizations and other companies to locate specific vulnerable populations at the national and local level beyond your immediate supply chain. That could also be a really interesting angle for a company to take into account. So that's why we've included it. We have also included a specific part on supplier engagement. We're talking about supply chain, so that's specifically important for you. And so communicating with your suppliers is a key part of this. So you have a couple of questions, same for the evaluations of your suppliers, and then the training programs, which Jonathan have mentioned. If we move on to the next one, so grievance mechanism, which is particularly important for workers and your suppliers, and also the people that are included in your program, to be able to report non-compliance situations and to really monitor the outcome of any grievance from external stakeholders that concerns your inclusive sourcing policy. So here we've taken the example of a speak-up mechanism. That's the way L'Oréal's done it. But of course, there are other mechanisms that you can put into place that could also work. And then we go to the final part, which is monitoring and reporting. And here we talk about KPIs, indicators, and for example, here on the KPIs part, there is a question on the type of methodology you're using. So that's in connection with your theory of change, which is in the guide, in the methodology itself. And then here, the question is more about the different KPIs that you've set to monitor your performance by sourcing category, supplier, zone, and of course, covering a large scope, including input, output, and output measurements. In the methodology, you have examples of those types of KPIs with a clear definition of what they mean. So that can be quite useful if the person who's reading it is not completely familiar with it. And of course, reporting, which is a key part. And then you have answered all of this and you land on this. So this is a spider chart that shows your maturity level on all of those topics and subtopics. The orange part is the leader category, the advanced is in a slightly lighter blue, and then beginner is in the dark blue. And what is really interesting is that it's quite rare to have a very coherent linear level. Usually your level will differ on certain topics, and it's quite interesting because it will show you the gaps and where you need to build capability and capacity. And so you might be an advanced company on internal stakeholder management, but you might still be not that mature on, for example, monitoring or reporting. And so this is a good way to assess exactly where you can progress and when there is room for improvement. And as I was saying at the beginning, this is a tool that you can use at either stage of the journey, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and anytime you want, because it will help you really assess where you stand and have a good idea of the progress that you can do to really move the needle and move towards impact. I know that we're right on time, so hopefully that works. I will stop sharing my screen, and I think that we have some questions, Q&A planned.
We do. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. What a story. And as I said, I think it's always good to see a collaboration actually produce something tangible. It's so easy for businesses to talk and not actually get anything done. But as we've seen through what you described, this is something very practical, very tangible. If there's anything that businesses need most at the moment, particularly when it's such a confusing world with guidance and topics, and is actually understand what others are doing and how they compare and what good looks like and best practice. So everyone loves a spider diagram, don't they, to be able to see how they're doing. So I think that's really, really impressive. So we have got quite a few questions. We've got a few people who are willing to ask questions as well. So I'm going to come to those. Thank you so much for answering some of the questions in the chat as well. So if you'd like to ask a question to the guys, please put your hand up in the reactions button. You can also ask it in the chat. I may not be able to spot it as easily as I can spot our hands. So, but yeah, we don't mind whether you want to say it or not. I'd like to come to you, Audrey, first, actually, with a question, because as is often the case with the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, the majority of the people on this call are passionate procurement professionals who want to get something done and actually do something different. So what would you recommend to them? How do they go to their procurement leadership with inclusive sourcing and this sort of methodology? How do you get them to sort of communicate to them that this is important on top of everything else that the business has to deal with? So perhaps your thoughts as a CPO about how others can talk to people like you.
Well, I won't teach, to buyers how to find the best way to negotiate and push their perspective in the discussion. And I think it comes to what is going to resonate most with their company and with their own the personality of their leaders and their CPO. But for me, we can look at it in 3 ways. First, it's good for the planet. And we know that it's not an option for companies anymore to be blind to responsibility. It's at the heart of what our consumers and customers ask for, that we are B2B or B2C. And it's at the point where not being inclusive, responsible could prevent companies to be sustainable in their growth. So ensuring that we give visibility to the value created by inclusivity and responsibility in the supply chain is critical. And it can be either by managing and mitigating risk. Again, when your consumer are expecting that you are taking a pledge and being responsible in the way you're supporting their needs, well, not doing it could have like a very direct and immediate impact on your activity. So that's I think one very important point from a business perspective. Second, it's very important in terms of function. I think Jonathan was mentioning it. We've been seen, in the past, in the 80s, as a cost cutter, and we are collectively been working a lot to move the sourcing organization and purchasing to a more strategic contribution within organization, and being able to link together financials and extra financials as a contribution offered from the métier to top management is essential, because today we know it. Valorization of companies is not just about their profit margin. It's a lot about what they commit to and what they're able to deliver. And sourcing, in this sense, has a very unique opportunity to bridge contribution between financials. We've known for that, and it's at the heart of our métier, of course, but also the whole value we can create, and sustainability and responsible sourcing for me as a huge opportunity and future in the valorization of companies. And last but not least, I said it's good for the planet, it's good for humanity, and it's good also for people. We know we've been facing, I'm sure, I don't want to be generic and to take shortcuts, but I'm sure depending on the geographies, the different industry we are supporting today, we are facing also some shortcuts in resources and more a stronger need to influence, motivate, engage people to follow us, our companies, our objective. And sustainability and responsible sourcing is a huge, for me, tool and a huge impact on the motivation and the sense of purpose of the métier of sourcing. So that it be for the valorization of your company, that it be for the valorization of the métier itself, or for the valorization and the engagement of our teams and talents, for me, there's no question about it. And
Excellent, excellent. Very good advice. And I'm sure you would agree, if anyone's CPO doesn't get it, maybe they can just speak to you one-to-one, and you can tell them and show them that it is incredibly worthwhile doing. Excellent presentation. Thank you. We've got some more questions. So one of the other questions that I've been asked is, and in the SPP, we don't like beautiful, polished case studies where everything's beautiful. We like to know what went wrong and what some of the challenges were. So perhaps a question to the wider team, and feel free to choose who picks this up. What are some of the hard lessons you've learned in this collaboration? Because it's probably been quite a journey to get to this tool. So what's been some of the objections that people typically ask, or some of the questions that typically ask? And Jonathan, maybe you want to pick that up, or any of you want to pick that question up?
No, gladly. I'll, in any case, I can start, and you know, the others are welcome to contribute as well. No, I mean, it was a long process. It took us a long time to really define the scope, have sort of a common understanding of what we all meant by inclusive sourcing, a willingness also to share. But that, to be in all fairness, that was there pretty early on. But it just took us a little while to sort of figure out exactly how we could work together. And then afterwards, you just sort of constantly have to sort of test these tools to see if are they, you try to put yourself in the perspective of others who will be wanting to use them and to say, well, you know, are these practical or not? So there was just a lot of test and learn throughout this process. We still think we can continue to, and surely we can continue to improve upon these tools, and we're very, you know, we're welcome to constantly take your feedback, as Camille was saying, if we can constantly, you know, improve upon them. And then also we're conscious of the fact that a lot of companies are starting at different places on this journey. So we're trying to come up with tools that can both speak to companies who are starting in the journey, but also companies who are maybe more mature. And that's where we really sort of had a moment, like our eureka moment was really with the self-assessment tool, where, as Marie was explaining, suddenly it allows companies of very different levels, where we have strong disparities in terms of their maturity levels, that tool can really speak to many different types of companies. So that, because before that we were just trying to find where to strike the line. But no, that was very helpful.
Excellent. Thanks. Anything to add, Marie, Camille?
Maybe, yes, over to you, Marie. You participated in all the sessions.
Maybe one of the challenges that we faced was that we wanted to make that tool public, cross-sectorial, and so that was quite a challenge to, you know, not be so focused on the industries that we had the member companies from, but to really make it usable for other.
That was so weird.
And then I guess
I'm in another meeting.
Sorry about that, guys. We always get one who's on mute. Don't worry.
No
Carry
worries.
on, and I'll mute them if they speak again.
No worries. And then for the public part, of course, I mean, companies have to be willing to share their journey and the different programs that they have, and that was also you know, something that we overcame. Yeah, no, it was great. I think also the willingness of sharing their experience and helping others was really important. As being part of a coalition, you want you know, to lift up everyone. So it was I think it was challenges that we overcame quite well.
Brilliant. Brilliant. We're gonna go through some quick fire questions now, because we've got about 6 minutes left before we sort of break for a bit of final networking. So Caitlin, are you there? I know you asked a really good question in the chat. Would you mind just quickly sharing your question, if you're there?
Sure. Thanks, Oliver. Thanks everyone for the presentations. This is such a great topic to hear about these resources available as well. I had a question about the first stage, so really back at the risk assessment stage. And I know a general tool like this really, like you said, can't capture everything. It has to be adaptable for different industries and different types of companies. But I wondered about what types of resources you were sharing around kind of that first stage, because I think there's a really important point that some kind of smaller ingredients or things that are perceived to be maybe lower down on the priorities list, maybe they're lower volume ingredients or things like that. They might be missed off right from that first stage, but they could be things that have kind of a disproportionate impact on biodiversity or livelihoods. So like I gave 2 examples of wild harvested plant ingredients like cantaloupe wax and gum arabic. They're both quite small, but actually like really close links to biodiversity, potential big impacts on communities if they're sourced responsibly. So yeah, I just wondered about the types of resources that you share at that stage, or if maybe there's a different community. Like I shared a report as well, which has some more information on those types of wild harvested ingredients.
Great. Quick answer to that, guys, if you can.
Yeah, perhaps what I'll do is I'll speak for B4IG, and then of course, Audrey, if you want to add anything in terms of our experience at L'Oréal, but at least from the B4IG standpoint, what I will say in response to your question, it's a very fair question. And and hopefully you'll capture this in the document, is we do understand at the very beginning, you've got to be a little tactical in terms of where do you start, because this is a learning process, and you can't cover all categories, procurement categories, you can't. So you have to sort of think a little tactically. Do we want to look at more sort of emblematic pilot projects, or do we rather, is this more sort of, because we're in a test and learn phase, you know? So I'm sorry if I can't give you a really sort of precise answer to your question, because as an organization, you have to think a little tactically and to say, you know, where do we want to start? You can really start in terms of saying, we're going to choose a very emblematic project because we feel afterwards we can gain in terms of brand equity from it, communication, reputational value from that project. Or you might say, you know what, because this is a very new terrain for us, maybe we should start with something a little smaller, where we have a good, you know, we have a good understanding, a good relationship with the supplier. So once again, it's a little bit hard to say where you should exactly start, but I understand fully your point, which is to say sometimes the small things can have a far greater impact. But I think what's more important is to say early on, if you're really starting this, is to say, okay, it's a test and learn phase. So you have to make sure that you're doing things which then you can learn from, which will help you scale it afterwards.
Yeah, excellent. I'm going to ask one final question, guys, before we sort of break for networking. But what's next from B4IG? I mean, this is an extraordinary piece of work and well done, and very, very proud to include it in our kind of suite of tools that we're sharing through the SPP. But what's next for you guys? And there's a huge number of things to go after, isn't there? Perhaps Camille, over to you.
Yes, good questions. This is something we have started discussing. We are considering collective action, but there are several options. A platform, several options we are currently discussing. It's a coalition, so it takes time to converge. Yes, but we have in mind some practical operational collective action. It's a coalition. That means that the action we will work on will have to bring value to each member companies, to add something more. But yes, definitely collective action. Which one to be discussed? It's a work in progress. Maybe excellent. Jonathan, Audrey, or Marie.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
So
Maybe
we're in a situation where we're conscious of the fact that we put a lot of effort into producing the methodology. We're very proud of it. We're very happy. We're very excited that we're launching it. We are conscious of the fact that we have to find a way afterwards to translate a lot of the work here into we haven't quite cracked it yet, but we're trying to figure out with Camille and Marie ways where we can use all of these contents and maybe develop them into more sort of training modules. But this is something which we just haven't quite figured out how we can do also based on our resources, to be very transparent. But this is the start. We're also looking forward to seeing all the feedback we get. What are the types of expectations this can create? And we're sure that some of the feedback we will help us sort of define the next steps in terms of what's sort of in this sort of like the next rung in this chain. Like what would we next need to develop for companies in order to help them to implement a lot of the concepts which you will find in the methodology.
Brilliant. Can I just say a huge thanks, Audrey, Camille, Jonathan, Marie. A fantastic presentation and really practical. And as I said, of course, all of the slides and everything else will be available. And as I said, we'll be helping everyone that's inspired by this to understand more about how they can actually move, not just from listening to it today, but actually getting involved. So thank you to everyone. Just a huge thanks to everyone that's participated. We are going to go into some networking now for about 15 minutes. So as I said, I'll come explain more about what's going to happen there in a second. But just a huge thanks to all champions that have supported us. A huge thanks to all the volunteers, the 40 or so of you that have been hugely patient and worked with us over the last few years to actually get this off the ground. We're obviously now hiring executive director and everything else, but it's hugely exciting. So thank you for the whole team, the SPP team, for participating in this. So we are a community. We do need to learn from each other. So we're just going to have a short networking break now to finish off with. So I'm going to put you all in breakout rooms. It takes a minute or two for me to sort you all out and put you in different rooms, but you're going to meet each other. Okay, so all you need to do is introduce who you are, who you work for, maybe share any sort of thoughts and examples from the session that you just had, anything that you think is interesting, or just say hello and just get introduced to each other before we finish. So generally, as I said, it's a nice conversation. You get to meet someone new and you get an opportunity to say hello. And then we'll finish off by saying a quick goodbye at the end. All makes sense? So brief introductions, introduce yourself, get to know each other, meet a friend in sustainable procurement, and hopefully, as I said, you'll find it very, very useful. Okay, I'm going to open all the rooms. So you should get an opportunity, and a little alert to say to join a room. If you'd like to join that room, that'd be great. As I said, if it tends to only be a few of you or a couple of you in a room, then I will move a couple of you around, but hopefully you get an opportunity to say hello. If you click over and hover over the breakout room button, you usually can see your alert to send you off into the rooms. For those of you that have just joined, I will also send you off to some rooms as well. For those of you with me, hi. There's a large group of you that are with me, admittedly. Let me just see if I can move some of you. Here we go. I'll be sending you off very shortly. For those who are still on the call, if you hover over the breakout button, some of you might not be able to join another room, that's fine. We can always have a chat in here if you'd like to. Or if you'd rather not join, that's fine. Again, otherwise that would be the end of the meeting, so feel free to drop off if you want.
Hi, can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, Keith.
Ah, right. Now, I went to room 11 and came back to this. So is this room 11?
This isn't room 11. This is the main lobby, I think. So Keith, if you should be able to go back in. If you click on breakout rooms again, you should be able to get back in there.
I haven't got anything here that says great.
Oh, don't worry about it. Keith,
join breakout room, yeah.
That's fine, Keith. We can stay here. Who are you and where are you from?
Right. Now, my name's Keith Barnes. I'm new to you all. I've been brought in and I'm very interested via Neil Shackleton and Lawrence Hamlin. Mm-hmm. I am a world expert on packaging.
All right. Bold.
I have been the chairman of the Packaging Society in the UK. I have done packaging for 57 years. Strangely enough, I was a packaging innovator at Boots, and I noticed they are paying up to become champions, which is a good thing. For the past few years, I have acted in my own right as a consultant. And in fact, for the whole of July, I have a group of American students coming over from Michigan State University, where I'll be talking to them and showing them factories and everything to do with packaging in the UK. So I am extremely interested because I know for a fact that there are very few companies that have a decent packaging department that understand what they're doing, because so few people go on courses. And it is desperate, and I know this is desperate in every area, not just packaging, because I'm also part of waste management, and they're as desperate to get people as packaging are. And if we don't train people, there is no future.
Yeah.
None of these things will happen. And I've listened to everything that we've said today, and this is fantastic for large companies because they've got the staff that can organize these things and move through. But small and medium companies would have difficulty in trying to do this. They should be doing it through their board of directors, but they don't necessarily do it. And all of them need guidance, well, certainly from my point of view, on packaging and now waste management. And the biggest thing that we've got to look at is climate change.
Yep, agreed, Keith, completely. I mean, 57 years of doing packaging. I suspect, I mean, that's impressive. No wonder you know your stuff there. I mean, a lot has changed in packaging in 57 years. So you highlighted, obviously, Lawrence Hamlin and others. So there is an SPP packaging chapter, isn't there, which is getting off the ground, and hopefully you're going to play a role in that. And equally, if there's anyone else listening in who's passionate about packaging and obviously sees some of the challenges in that, then yeah, please look up our packaging chapter. I'd highly recommend it. Good to have you with us, Keith. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having your input.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to contact me directly, they are very welcome.
Oh, well, as I said, it's very rare you have 57 years worth of knowledge on packaging. So definitely everyone should get in touch. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to introduce themselves?
Okay, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Augustina. How are you doing?
Hi. Good. Thank you. How are you, Oliver?
I'm very good.
Everyone. So I'm Augustina Kidonius. Yeah, I'm based in San Francisco, California. So I'm currently positioned as a senior procurement manager for on-site account at the Google account. I'm working with Cushman & Wakefield, real estate and then workplace services. So yeah, I'm at the point of my career where I get a little bit tired of listening to like, oh yeah, squeeze a few dollars savings here and there. And I'm like, you know what, guys, I'm moving on.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
Important to me, sustainability.
I think you're just cutting out
discussions items, and then it's I've been in procurement and sourcing for a while. Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We got a little bit of it. It's just it cut out a little bit. But yeah, I think you're not the only one. I mean, one of the majority of the procurement professionals in the SPP, and there is a lot. There are nearly 10,000, I think, that have signed up. It almost feels like procurement's in a bit of a midlife crisis. Almost, it feels like it's a profession that has so much capability and so much knowledge and so much skills, and hasn't had to respect it and the opportunity it deserves necessarily. It has been sort of seen as the cost cutters, or the cost cutters, I should say. And it is an opportunity now for procurement to use sustainability to empower the profession more, isn't it? I think it's not just about people empowerment. I think this is fundamentally about the profession. So you're not the only one who's frustrated, I think, with how you could apply your skills in more ways for your business. And in property, and Cushman & Wakefield obviously doing quite a bit on sustainability, then there's lots to share and lots to give. Is there anyone else who'd like to share and say hello, perhaps who hasn't made it to a room? Feel free to come off mute, introduce yourself.
Right. Yeah. We just initially.
Or maybe I'll introduce myself. How about that? So yeah, I'm Oliver Hurry. For those who I haven't yet met, obviously I chair the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, but in my daytime, I try to help businesses collaborate on sustainability. So I run a number of different initiatives and collaborations. One on Scope 3, I run the Scope 3 peer group, which is a giant self-help group on Scope 3 and supply chain emissions, with lots of people crying on each other's shoulder about how difficult it is to measure and reduce emissions in the supply chain. I've worked with various different collaborations like AIM Progress in industry collaborations to try and help develop the tools that are used by procurement and try to help those collaborations actually achieve things rather than just talk about them. So yeah, my work over the last 15 years has been about getting people together with the same problem and trying to solve it, particularly with shared suppliers. So hopefully you enjoyed the session. Is there anyone else who wants to introduce themselves? Come off mute. You're all the people that couldn't get in the room, so you're probably stuck in an abyss or just gone to make a cup of tea or gone to the toilet probably, I should imagine. If not, then no, don't worry at all. Feel free to leave us. You can also, if you're having troubles joining the rooms, let me know. As I said, I should be able to do that. If you click on the breakout rooms function on the bar, you usually get your alert to join your room if you want to go and join it. Otherwise, yeah, thanks very much, and we'll see you again soon. Hi, Jacob. Hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, is this a bit long for just a two-person group though?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, it's,
you don't feel the need to you have to string it out for too long. Don't worry. That's
yeah,
fine.
well, yeah, I think the kind of group, if it's longer, if it's like going to be 15 minutes, it needs to be 4 or 5 people to have.
It normally is, but obviously people leave, and then the number is difficult to kind of.
Oh wow, okay. There's only everyone left. I think it looks like everyone, or maybe they're in the break room, so they're not counted.
No, they're all. It doesn't count when you're in the room. Yeah. No, there's still lots of people, but it's I feel like I'm Rain Man, looking at all the numbers and trying to divide everything by 5. But it's all fun. It's only a bit of networking there. Where are you from, Jacob? Your face looks familiar. Your name looks.
I'm from the U.S., but I live here in Vietnam for the last couple of years. I kind of got stuck here after COVID. So.
Very great. And what do you do?
I do consulting around procurement, mostly helping companies move out of China to Vietnam. Some things with helping with sourcing and helping companies replace their Chinese suppliers with Vietnamese alternatives, stuff like that.
Oh, well, we need an SPP Vietnam if you're interested.
There's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot going on there. I haven't looked at the group to see if there's anyone else in Vietnam besides me.
There will be. There's a whole host of people from Vietnam, based in Vietnam on various different projects. And I know Reckitt, the Reckitt Benckiser business, does quite a lot of work, really interesting work in Vietnam with suppliers. And you'd be surprised. There actually is quite a number of people all over the world from different countries. And I know we have got other people from Vietnam. So, if you'd be interested in maybe seeing who is in Vietnam in procurement.
Yeah. I'll look on the website. I haven't looked at the website in.
Neither have I, Jacob.
3 months.
And I work here. Don't worry.
3 months is probably the last time I looked at it.
That's fine. Don't worry. It's perfectly normal. But as I said, it's always worth dropping us a note to see if other people are interested in based in Vietnam, and you could start a small group. Again, it's only
it also kind of nice
might
to
meet some like-minded people.
Yeah, it's also nice to just do like a little happy hour or something more in-person stuff, because everything's opened up here, everything's back to normal.
Yeah,
it's this thing right now. Everything's very, very busy because in the last 2 months, like everyone was sitting on the sideline. Now everyone says, "Okay, we're ready to come into Vietnam."
Yeah.
Now they've been sitting on the sideline forever. And now they're saying, "Okay, now we have to do it." So
brilliant. Well, if I need someone who works in procurement and sustainability in Vietnam, I now know someone. So this has been worthwhile for me.
Okay.
Cheers, Jacob. Okay. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
See you soon. So that's it. Thank you very much for all those that joined us and are in the room. Everyone's leaving the rooms now. So I hope you really enjoyed that. We'll see you again in September, if you can join us. As I said, hopefully you've seen the link in the chat, but you can register for September now, I believe. If you want to click the registration link, we get that up. But I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you met some interesting people. Thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that. I put the link in the chat. The very final link is the registration link for September's meeting. Get it in there nice and early. Tell your friends, bring your family, anyone else that's interested. The more people that learn about this, the better. We won't get to 1 million procurement professionals without a bit of a viral campaign. So delighted to have you bring your colleagues as well. Hey, Laura, how you doing?
Hi, Audrey. Great. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Good. So thank you, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed it. As I said, I hope you had a good meeting. Hope you enjoyed it. Please join us again. Please go to spp.earth. There's plenty of materials on there. You can join your local or industry chapter, of course, on there. And as I said, if you've got any questions at all, feel free to get in touch with us about the next event. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, Marie. Thanks, Harriet. Thanks, Hamish. Really appreciate it. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good time in your meetings. met some interesting individuals. And yeah, thank you so much for joining our meeting. If you look in the chat, there is a link for September's meeting to be able to register now. So if you scroll up to that, obviously click on that and join us again in the 15th of September. We're going to be talking about traceability and transparency in September. So a topic that's inevitably important, I think it's safe to say. So do join us again for that. I hope you've enjoyed this session. I hope you enjoyed your networking. Hope you met some interesting people, or not. Maybe you've just avoided them and run away from them. I don't know, but that's the diversity and the spice of life. But I hope you did have a good time. As I said, if you've got any questions for the SPP, you'd like to find out how to become a champion or whatever it might be, you can get in touch with us through champions@spp.earth. And as I said, we're all delighted to have your support. Thank you again, and we'll see you again in a few months.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you too. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, no problem.
Shanta, good to see you.
Yeah. Hi, Thomas. How are you? I'm good.
It's a bit late. It's a bit late for you, but it's nice that you were hanging in there.
Yeah, but these are very important sessions for me because I am into sustainable procurement and into strategy and integration. So a lot of learning.
Good to see you, man. You look good. Hang in there.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. I mean, that sounds like the role of the person that we try and help. So I'm glad you're here.
He used to work. He's via alumni.
Oh, right. Well, there we go. He's learned from the best then, Thomas.
No. I learned from the best.
No. I learned from your, yeah.
Is that your daughter behind you?
Yeah. My daughter has come behind me. Yeah, she is my daughter.
Oh, look at her. Hey.
How are you?
Your dad is very cool. Did he tell you that?
Right.
If you told my daughter her dad was cool, she'd disagree massively. I think it's definitely. It's still the age where we were popular. Yeah, indeed. Was your session good, Thomas? Did you meet some interesting people? Room 1 was amazing. Yeah, brilliant. Yes, yeah. But it's also interesting. There's a lot of urgency around Scope 3. I mean the conversation moved very quickly to Scope 3. What are we going to do now? So yeah, it's amazing how it all boomerangs back to Scope 3. And yeah, it sounds like the TFS community's making strides as well there and making some decisions as well, which is good. Yeah, no, that was really good yesterday. So standards are coming out. And Jens is happy as the Scope 3 lead of everything, it seems. So that's good. That's good. He's worked so hard over the last few years on that. It's
great. So maybe I'll excuse myself and I'll stay connected. Thank you so much. We are just closing up here. Feedback session. See you in September. I will. See you in September. Enjoy. Greetings to the team. Bye. All right, Oliver, we've got a session coming up now at 6. Because I have a dinner I need to go to. Can I? So do I. So I'm quite happy to knock it on the head and move on. Well, either that or we talk in the car. What's your preference? I don't think there's a huge amount to cover. No, right? Is there anybody I need to contact? No, I think we're looking good. Okay. It's now the start of the next wave. Exactly, and I think coming out of the conversation last week, also at the awards, there's quite a few people who is keen to get engaged. So what I'll do, maybe I'll just have my little hit list. Maybe look at the overall priority, because it may a few of them actually expressed an interest. So I'll just update that and come back to you then. And as you've seen, I think we've had quite a few emails from people who've read the news, and obviously, so I've been on top of that. So I'll have those conversations. But yeah, it's great. I mean, so many people interested. So it's going to be great to try and get a next wave, I think. And but I have all the CPOs now coming to apologize why we haven't received the money. So it seems everybody's accounts payables process is unfortunately completely. Well, you've seen it from the other side now, Thomas. You've seen the world. So I understand why people don't necessarily like procurement. Excellent. Well, thank you, Thomas. Thank you to everyone that's listening in, and we'll see you again in September. Everybody, all right. See you then. Bye-bye.